What's up guys? So today we're going to be talking about ultrasonic cleaners. This is a topic that I feel like is not talked about enough in the repair space, and I was really confused as to what to buy early on, and I had to do a lot of looking around and research. I have no idea why there's not a lot of good information out there regarding cleaning PCBs with ultrasonic cleaners. The only really great videos I found on the subject is from Louis Rossmann, so I'll put his video in the description. I definitely recommend giving that a watch. Actually has experience using the cleaners on a regular basis for MacBooks, and not only that, but having success with them and proven success with them, which I think is the most important part. There's a lot of videos out there about cleaning like retro PCBs using ultrasonic cleaners, but I think that is a different topic altogether because these days, we have smaller and more sensitive components and PCBs. And if you don't know what you're doing with an ultrasonic cleaner, you can really screw up PCBs and end up causing more issues than you are solving. We're going to be looking at cleaning these two PCBs right here, and we're going to be going over what kinds of ultrasonic cleaners you should be looking at and whether or not you need one in the first place, as well as what kinds of solution you should be using for cleaning the PCBs in a safe way. This right here is actually the bent switch motherboard that we were doing a series on before with BGA trace repair under the SoC and stuff like that. As you can see, I did not put this thing through the ultrasonic cleaner yet, and I think it is potentially causing boot issues. It's entirely possible that this thing is just dead, but it'd be fun to put it through the ultrasonic cleaner. And this one is a logic analyzer I built in another video, and you can see this thing is also just covered in flux and it has crap all over it, and I would like to get this thing cleaned up as well. I'll link to the video where I built this thing, and I actually got the PCB of this thing here printed from today's sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay offers high quality PCB fabrication as well as CNC machining and 3D printing services. If you're looking to print PCBs for a new project, go to PCB Instant Quote and then just click upload Gerber files and then upload your zip file. And then you can scroll down and change settings like the color of the solder mask as well as the color of the silkscreen. And if you scroll down even further, you can actually check this SMD stencil option, and they'll actually create a stencil for you that you can use to more easily assemble your PCBs by using solder paste. Or if you'd prefer them to assemble the PCBs, you can check their assembly service here. So thanks to PCBWay for sponsoring this video, and let's get back into it. All right, so first we need to talk about whether or not it's worth buying an ultrasonic cleaner. Fair warning that the cleaners that I'm going to be recommending in this video, as well as the cleaning solution, are by no means cheap, but I will say that if you are working on laptops or phones specifically, this thing is going to pay itself off very quickly for you because they're very good at cleaning boards that have a lot of liquid damage and a lot of corrosion on them, and can honestly just revive certain boards without having to pull off, BGA chips and things like that. The reason I say phones and laptops is because those are sort of like the most commonly liquid damaged devices. I personally work on a lot of consoles like PS5s, Xboxes, and Switch consoles, and you really don't get a ton of liquid damaged consoles compared to laptops and phones. But yeah, laptops and phones and things are constantly getting liquid damage, and an ultrasonic cleaner is going to really pay itself off quickly. I don't know that I would recommend this kind of thing for hobbyists. They can be nice if you're building lots of custom boards like this and you want to be able to clean a lot quickly without having to use alcohol. If that for you warrants the prices, then by all means, go ahead and get one. All right, this is honestly not horribly nasty solution, but I'm going to get rid of it so that I can show you how I mix my solution. And I also want to show you the one I have and some links to where you can get something like this. So a lot of them come with this little drain tube on the back, and this one in particular just has this little plastic that pinches it. So we're just going to take this off, and I'm going to go ahead and dump this into a bucket. And it's got a little hole in the bottom where it's going to drain the whole thing. We can also just sort of tilt it towards the corner there. Cool, so that's all drained out, and I'm just going to pinch this again. And I'll just clean up the basket and the cleaner with some clean room wipes. All right, so this is the unit I have. It is a Crest Ultrasonics 275 HTA. You can't get this particular model anymore new. You can find them used. I actually got mine used for about like $300 to $400 Canadian dollars, so $200 to $300 US dollars, which honestly was a great price to find these at. I do recommend buying these used because they are pretty pricey. New, so this is their new models. They have the PowerSonic benchtop cleaners, and you can see they are not particularly cheap. But what I will say is that it is definitely worth grabbing a high quality ultrasonic cleaner like this, or like the ones from Branson. You can see they have some here that are also, similar price range. But the nice part about these is that they have a sweeping frequency. So the way ultrasonic cleaners work is that they have these little things attached to the actual bottom of the tank here, and they essentially vibrate the liquid that's in the tank at an ultrasonic frequency, which causes something called cavitation. It creates these really tiny bubbles in the liquid that essentially collapse aggressively, and that collapsing of the little bubbles that get created is what cleans the PCBs in this case. And the benefit of this compared to just cleaning with IPA or flux cleaners is that it can actually clean underneath components like these large BGA chips here without having to remove them. It can actually get between all these little cracks and crevices within ports here and stuff like that. And it's really, really effective at cleaning. You'll see the before and after of this PCB as well as this PCB after I get these cleaned. These also allow you to heat the liquid to a specific temperature, which will also aid the cavitation to clean things off of the board. And the benefit of the sweeping frequency on these more expensive units is that different PCBs and various components and things are going to clean better at those different frequencies. And ultrasonic cleaning is a little bit aggressive, so it's kinder to the PCBs versus just hitting it with the same frequency over and over again. It's going to sweep between frequencies. It's going to clean a lot more thoroughly than just using one frequency. So I can't necessarily recommend that you get a cheap Chinese ultrasonic cleaner like these Verver cleaners that are all over the place on Amazon and AliExpress. They do not have sweeping frequencies. They generally just use, I think, 40 kilohertz. Yeah, you can see here 40 kilohertz. And it's just going to stay at that frequency the entire time. It's not going to sweep, and it's not going to be as thorough, and you're going to have to do multiple passes with the same board, which is not ideal. You do not want to be subjecting these things to the aggressiveness of ultrasonic cleaning for more than you need to. The other thing I've heard about these is that they are really poor build quality and they break all the time. And while they are cheaper than Branson or Crest, I've heard about them breaking quite often, and it's still not like entirely cheap. You know, if you can get for $150 or $200 extra a used nice unit that does a sweeping frequency and has a nice build quality and it's going to last you a long time, that investment, in my opinion, is 100% worth it, especially if you are cleaning customer devices. So all that to say is, if you are working on customer devices, I highly recommend getting a proper ultrasonic cleaner that sweeps frequencies. It's going to last you longer and it's going to do a much better job at cleaning. The next thing is to talk about what we should actually be putting in the ultrasonic cleaner, liquid wise and detergent wise. You should 100% be using distilled water for this. Don't use tap water. Don't use flammable liquids like isopropyl alcohol, because you're going to be agitating the liquid. And IPA is flammable and acetone is flammable, so stay away from flammable solutions, because not only do you want to heat the solution in order to more effectively clean the PCBs, but it's also going to be agitating that solution in a very aggressive way, which is going to increase the risk for combustion. And the last thing you want is for this to turn into a fire hazard. So in my opinion, just stay away from IPA and ultrasonic cleaners, stay away from acetone or things like that. It is much cheaper, easier, and safer to use distilled water along with a detergent. So just use distilled water. And you need to make sure it's distilled water and not tap water, because tap water has minerals and things in it that are going to leave behind residue when they are dried. And this is going to cause corrosion and things like that when you start using the device. And that's how you get liquid damaged devices in the first place. So make sure it's distilled. And now for the detergent. So this is probably the single most annoying thing to figure out what to use and where the hell to get it, because a lot of people talk about Branson EC online, and this thing apparently is liquid gold, and you can't find it like anywhere. At least I had a hard time finding it in Canada. Wherever I found it online, it was ridiculously expensive. And one of the reasons for that is because of shipping. This is considered a hazardous chemical, and they have to ship this via ground transportation. This is one of the best things to use because it's designed for cleaning sensitive electronics and PCBs, and it is an industry standard for ultrasonic cleaning. You can actually find distributors for smaller bottles of this stuff. You really do not need a lot of this. This is going to last you a while. But again, this is not the price you're going to be paying, because you're going to be paying for ground shipping for this stuff. You can see ground shipping only, cannot be air shipped. In Canada, this is the only place I've been able to find this. I believe they are the only certified Branson redistributor in Canada, even though the packaging is different. It's the exact same formula as Branson EC. Again, you're just going to have to be paying a decent fee for shipping. But I probably will never have to buy this stuff again, because you're going to see how little we have to use every time I refill the ultrasonic cleaner, which is honestly not very often. There are a couple other ultrasonic cleaning solutions designed for PCBs, but the majority of these you need to buy in like huge vats and stuff for industrial use. So Branson EC is going to be your best bet as far as a consumer level ultrasonic cleaning solution that's designed for PCBs. I highly recommend just dropping the money and getting this if you are a shop working on customer devices. If you're just doing this as a hobby and you're looking for a detergent that's a little bit less expensive, just stay away from either highly alkaline or highly acidic cleaners. For this reason, I don't recommend using dish soap. I know a lot of people online say that they have luck with dish soap. I personally would never use dish soap along with the ultrasonic cleaner on a customer device. If you're doing this as a hobby, you decide what risk level you want to take there with the devices that you're dunking into liquid. But a lot of dish soaps are like varying pHs and are not necessarily designed to be non-conductive or designed to leave no residue behind. So if you're a hobbyist and you're on a budget and you're looking for a cleaning solution that is not priced like liquid gold, This is the next best thing I can recommend for you. It's the Simple Green Extreme Cleaner. You can grab this stuff on Amazon for relatively cheap, and I'll have a link for it in the description. Again, you just mix a small portion of that, like 5%, with distilled water, similar to how I'm going to be using this Branson EC in this video. The reason I would recommend the Simple Green Extreme specifically is because it's designed for sensitive metals. It's also non-corrosive and has a pretty neutral pH level. So you're much better off and safer using that stuff versus something like dish soap, which is going to be very unpredictable depending on which dish soap you have. So let's get the ultrasonic cleaner over here and we can mix our solution. All right, so first off, this ultrasonic cleaner has some little lines on the corners here. And this is the fill line, so we're not going to fill it past this. And I know for a fact this is a 0.75 gallon tank. So we're going to be using about 100 milliliters of the Branson EC cleaning solution. And that's going to be about 3.5% of the 0.75 gallons, which is right in between our 2 to 5% by volume recommendation from Branson themselves. You can also see after we mix the solution, we want to degas the solution for a minimum of 10 minutes before actually putting the PCBs in there. And you can also see we need to thoroughly rinse the PCBs afterwards and obviously also thoroughly dry them. So because I know this fill line is 0.75 gallons, I'm not going to bother measuring out the distilled water. I'm just going to pour some distilled water until, it's about halfway full. All right, now we can mix in the cleaning solution. So I'm just going to fill this up to 100 milliliters. We're just going to dump the Branson EC in here. And I'm just going to mix it around. And definitely use gloves for this because this cleaner does not feel really great when you get it on your skin. And it's probably not super good for you. You can see it's very syrupy too. Now I'm just going to open another thing of distilled water here and fill the rest of it up to the fill line. And we'll give it a stir one more time here. And I just got the cleaner plugged in, so I'm going to turn it on here. And it takes a little while to heat up all of the liquid in here. So we're going to turn the heater on while we're degassing it. And for PCBs, you're going to want to use anywhere from about 30 degrees Celsius to around a maximum of 60 degrees Celsius. So I'll usually just set it to 50 degrees Celsius. And the heater is on now, so it's going to take a little while to heat this whole thing up. And I'm also going to run this thing for about 10 minutes like it recommends to degas the liquid. While we're doing that, I'm going to show you a little demonstration with some tin foil that you can use to make sure your ultrasonic cleaner is working properly. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this thing on to 10 minutes. And you can see it's just already going everywhere. So I'm just going to put the lid on this. All right, so this has finished degassing and it is nice and warm now. Take note that whenever you take this lid off, it often has lots of liquid underneath it. I've gone ahead and put some eye protection on because I'm going to be turning this thing on without the lid. And God forbid I get Branson EC in my eyes, I would have to recover it and reuse it because it's too expensive to be putting in my eyes. But jokes aside, don't get this stuff on your skin or in your eyes, so use PPE. So a great way to see if your ultrasonic cleaner is working correctly is to take a bit of tinfoil like this and just turn the cleaner on and then dip the tinfoil in the cleaner. And you can already see over here holes being put in the tinfoil. You can actually feel it too in the tinfoil itself that it's being agitated by the liquid. So I'm going to turn this thing off and we'll take this out, and you can already see all of those little dots there. Those aren't bubbles, those are actually holes put in the tinfoil by the cavitation. So this is a great way to tell if cavitation is actually occurring in your ultrasonic cleaner. You can see if I hold this up to the camera with a light, you can see all the little holes that got put in the tinfoil. So anyways, nice little test you can do to see if your ultrasonic cleaner is working. So next we need to talk about prepping the board before we put them in the cleaner. And there's one thing on each of these boards I want to do before putting these in the cleaner. The first thing I want to do is on this board, I want to take the eMMC off of the board. And we can clean this separately if we wanted to. I'm just going to leave it off. But more importantly, I'm going to take the shield off. So you want to take all of the shields off of the PCBs so that the liquid actually gets in and around here. And so that liquid doesn't get trapped under here when we go to rinse and dry the PCBs later on. So outside of that, I don't see anything on this particular PCB that is going to cause issues for us, and this thing is ready to go in the ultrasonic cleaner. But this board, there's one thing I want to do to it before we put it in. There are certain components that you do not want to be putting in a cleaner like this. One is obviously batteries. You don't want to be submerging batteries in liquid, so you got to take batteries off or things like that. You also do not want to be putting screens or displays or LCDs in here. Any kind of microphones or speakers or buzzers, you want to take those off the PCB before putting the PCB in here, because the cavitation will destroy the little membranes in those. Any like sealed parts like relays and things that are sealed that could trap liquid, and which would be next to impossible to like dry and get the water out of because they're designed to be sealed. You want to make sure to take those sorts of things off, as well as any things that have like little moving parts in them, like these switches for example. So I would probably take off this switch And this button here is probably going to trap water and could cause corrosion in there. It can make the button not function properly. Same with the switch, again, relays with moving parts. Also, mostly anything that relates to like light, like fiber optic ports and things like that, you're going to want to take that sort of stuff off. So I'm going to go ahead and desolder the switch and this button from this PCB before we put it in. So I've gone ahead and removed the switch as well as the button here, and this thing is also prepped to go in the ultrasonic cleaner. So next we have to talk about how we should be placing these PCBs in the basket when we put them in the cleaner. And you really do want one with a basket or at least some way of suspending the PCBs, because you really want it to be suspended in the liquid and not touching the bottom of the tank, because it will not get effectively cleaned. So when you put the PCBs in the basket, you want them to be sort of more vertical than horizontal. When they're horizontal, only one side is really going to get cleaned well at a time, and components can like trap air and not get effectively cleaned, and you want the liquid to get in and around the entire board. Not to mention allowing gravity to help get all the crap that gets cleaned off the board from the cavitation to get off of the board and not just stay on the board because it's flat. So you want it to be sort of more vertical or angled. Angled is good as well because dirt and crap is not going to settle back on the top of the PCB nearly as much as if it was like this. I learned this little trick from Louis Rossman's video. He'll just do a minute like this and then rotate it and do a minute like this and then flip the board over, minute like this, and then rotate it and a minute like this. Honestly, for this board, since there's not a whole lot going on the bottom, it probably doesn't matter too much, but we'll still go with doing that. And you really only want to do a couple minutes at a time max. So I'm going to place them in the basket like this, and we're going to dip them in slowly. We also do want to make sure these are fully submerged, so I'm just going to kind of play around with these until they are indeed fully under. But I'm happy with this because this little top piece does not really need to be cleaned. Plus, we're going to be rotating and flipping it and stuff, so it's not a huge deal. So again, normally here I'd put the lid on to turn it on, but I want you guys to see sort of what happens when we turn it on. So I'm just going to turn it on for a minute here. So just be aware that coatings and things are going to come off as well. You can see all the paint coming off of that heatsink there. All right, so it's been about a minute here, and we're going to just rotate these guys. And just to help this thing be at an angle, I'm just going to throw some tweezers in there just to hold it sort of against the wall. And I'm just going to cover it up this time, and we can turn it on for another minute. I'm just going ahead and flipping these over now. Just like that, we'll put the lid back on and do another minute. I'm finally just rotating these one last time. All right, so all 4 minutes are complete, and we can just lift the basket here and kind of let the excess water drip off of these. And look how interesting that is. All of the black paint came off of that heatsink there. And this is also a great way to clean your tweezers and stuff. After a lot of use, you get like flux on them. Obviously be aware of like paint or coatings and things are going to come off. Like this I probably would not put in here, but you could unscrew these little tips and put the ceramic tips in here. And I found that these colored titanium tweezers are fine to put in here as well. So let me get this thing moved out of the way and let's take a look at the PCBs. You really want to make sure not to leave PCBs like this in the ultrasonic cleaner for more than about like 3 to 5 minutes. I stick to about a minute per side like we just did. All right, so we're not done. We need to rinse the detergent off of these. So the best way to do this is to grab some 99% IPA and just dump it in a dish like this, and then just leave these in here for a few minutes. And if you want, you can like rotate these and flip them. And what the IPA is going to do is it's going to displace any of the water that is remaining in the board, and it's going to allow the board to essentially cool faster than it would if we just were to rinse it with distilled water, for example. So I'll just soak these for about a minute each side here, and I don't think this is actually going to be big enough for this particular motherboard. All right, so I've got a larger container here that we could put this one in. And again, I'm just going to make sure it's fully submerged, get all of that water displaced. And because the whole point of this is for it to dry fast, get the 99% IPA. They have 90% and like 75%. Those are both going to evaporate slower than the 99% stuff. So just get this and save yourself some time. And you can save the rest of the alcohol here strictly for use with doing this. So I just keep a little bottle of it that I use to dunk the boards in, and then every once in a while I'll replace the alcohol as well. But we're really just using it to displace the cleaning solution, so it really doesn't get all that dirty, and it saves you from buying a ton of alcohol every time you need to rinse boards. So next you want to dry the boards, obviously. You can either just let them air dry overnight, or some people get like a spare toaster oven and you can just set them in there at like 70 degrees Celsius. Or you can get like a rack food dehydrator and that works fine. What I like to do is just grab my high powered blower like this or some compressed air and then just blow air on the boards to get a lot of the alcohol evaporated. And just make sure you get in like all the ports and things like that. Make sure it's all dry. And I don't know if you could see that, but with the BGA components, if you blow underneath them, a lot of the alcohol will just like come out from underneath the chips. And now I'll just let them air dry for the rest of the way for like a couple hours and you should be good. Here's the switchboard. I'll show you a little before and after here. You can see just how clean this thing is compared to what it looked like before. It is night and day. Here's the logic analyzer. You can see a lot of the coating came off of that heatsink there. But this is also looking significantly less fluxy than it was before, and just a lot more clean overall. I had a lot of trouble and frustration early on finding good information about ultrasonic cleaning PCBs and how to do it in a safe way. So I hope this was a helpful video for some of you guys who are in the same boat as I was. But yeah, let me know what other kinds of tutorials you guys would like to see in the comments. I'd love to know what kinds of frustrations you guys are running into with learning microsoldering and board repair. And I'd love to make some more content that is specifically requested by you guys. So please throw your ideas in the comments. And as always, I appreciate you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.